Hey everyone, so welcome to the Bánh Mì Chronicles podcast. I am your host, Randy Kim. And so today I am very excited to bring on this guest. And Dr. Akilah Cadet, going by she, her pronouns, is the founder and CEO of Change Cadet, a creative organizational development consulting firm that offers support embedding belonging into overall company culture, identity, strategy, and storytelling. You know, the thing that Trump is always loving to attack and lives rent free in his head. As a Forbes Next 1000 entrepreneur and one of San Francisco Business Times' most influential women of the Bay Area, her work is behind some of the biggest brands you use every day. Dismantling white supremacy through storytelling is at the core of her work as a leader, speaker, creative director, producer, writer, editor, co-owner of the Oakland Roots and Soul soccer teams. She led the most successful community investment round in sports history. Host of Humane Rights Podcast and author of White Supremacy is all around notes from a Black disabled woman in a white world. She literally has all the degrees, lives and loves Oakland, California, celebrates her disability, is a proud Beyonce advocate, and has an incredible shoe game. So it is an honor. Welcome to my show. And I knew about your work through Michelle Kim, who is also um, an amazing activist, someone who I've followed, and her work has led me to learning about your work. And about like 2.5 years ago, you released your book, "White Supremacy is All Around," and I was able to like do a quick feature on that on my Substack, and I was really blown away. I wouldn't I think the word blown away might be a little over exaggerated. I was very moved by it because I felt that these are discussions that we really need to have. But also, I think that this was like before Trump 2.0, DEI, there was this crossroads where DEI was standing. I think we could talk more about that part because I think that there is a lot to unpack where it stands right now. But how are you navigating 2026 so far? Anything that you have learned about yourself or from what you've experienced this year?
So, first of all, hi, Randy. I'm so excited to be here today. I am disabled, so I'm going to do an image description for
Mhm.
anyone who lives with disability. You shared my pronouns. I also like to say bad bitch or she, her.
Mhm.
I am sitting in my office in Oakland, California. There's a bookshelf behind me that has my book, yellow book that says White
Mhm.
Supremacy is All Around. I have loose curls today, and I'm wearing a black crew neck sweater of my own design that says Do the Work. And also behind me, you'll see my angel dog, Marley. D'Angelo told me that I have brown sugar skin. I have hazel eyes. I am very pretty. I have pretty privilege. And I use that to dismantle white supremacy. And so here we are
Mhm.
in 2026. And 2026 is a clusterfuck for sure. But the thing that I've had to tap into more is little pockets of joy. Ever since Donald Trump has been in office, it has been incredibly hard for me as a Black person, as a woman, and as a disabled person. I am constantly under attack by him and this administration. Now, you will hear me refer to Donald as Donald because there's a 2018 study that showed if you call someone by their first name, they're not qualified to do their job.
Mhm.
That's why a lot of marketing and branding during the last presidential campaign was Kamala and Trump was Trump,
Oh.
right? And this happens a lot to women. You'll see women in powerful positions
Mhm.
and they'll call us by our first name instead of Dr. Cadet, right? And so Pete, James, David, Donald, they're all not qualified to do their jobs. And so that's why you'll hear me refer to them in their first name basis. When Donald got into office, the first thing he did was said, trans who? No, right? We saw that attack on DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. The next day, same day or next day, it was like, get rid of DEI. We're not going to have any of that. And then we've seen what happened in that first year of Donald in office, which was his Black women have been under attack.
Mhm.
It's estimated that 600,000 Black women have lost their jobs. We don't know the true number because they stopped reporting that data. I am one of those Black women who's been impacted. It's just not Black women who are in 9 to 5 positions. A lot were in the federal, city, county positions where those
Mhm.
dollars were impacted.
Mhm.
But it's also Black entrepreneurs like myself. And so I have been in survival mode ever since he's been in office. I'm tired. I'm exhausted.
Mhm.
And so finding joy is a huge act of resistance
Mhm.
uh, in general with my intersectionality, but even more so today.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. Also, correction, it is Dr. Cadet, so my apologies. And
Fine. No, you are fine. I'm not worried about that at
I
all.
just want to make
You
sure,
said
yeah.
first and last name. No, call me Akilah. We're okay.
Yeah.
The doctor's really more so for white
Yes.
people. That's why I got a doctorate because they look at me and they don't think I have value. And so if they have to
Hmm.
call me Dr. Akilah or Dr. Cadet or Dr. C, whatever doctor you have to put there, it is a verbal reminder.
Hmm.
It's a written reminder that I am part of that 3% of people who have this degree, and I'm part of 0.4% of Black women that
Hmm.
have that degree. And they know what that means.
Yeah.
And that's why I got a doctorate.
Yeah, it's like, I think what Tina Turner said, I think if you remember What's Love Got to Do with It, when she wanted to keep the Tina Turner names in anime, she's like, I worked really hard for that name. And I think of
Yeah.
people who have doctorates, especially if you are a non-white person, as a woman, that like, I want to be given that respect. You are going to give me the respect. I've worked
Yes.
years and I've done the work. And other people, have the privilege of just being able to be called first name without even realizing it. It is very interesting that you point out like how Kamala was, named Kamala in,
Hmm.
the campaign, but we
Yeah.
think of like Biden. We don't call him Joe. We also think of Obama, even Barack Obama. We call him Obama,
And
you know.
Michelle is Michelle,
Yes,
right? You'll hear certain
exactly.
people say First Lady Obama, right? And that's a huge power dynamic. So that's why
Hmm.
I'm reclaiming that and putting it towards the people who aren't qualified to do their jobs, right? And these positions of
Mm-hmm.
power and leadership. I think it's really important. And also I hope it also pisses them off when, you call someone Donald. I'm not going to give the authority to people who are attacking humanity. I'm
Yeah.
not going to give authority to people who are upholding values of white supremacy, who are purposely harming oppressed groups, the LGBTQ plus community, the disabled community, veterans, right?
Mhm.
Women, and obviously uh, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, right?
Yeah, I think that's very interesting because like I remember, being in the university settings, going for my undergrad and my master's. I've noticed that um there's a lot of professors, well, especially with men, professors, they just want to be called by their first name. I think that's very interesting too, but then, you have other folks that like I really feel like I need to be called doctor because it's the form of respect. I did the work. I wonder why are there a lot of male professors that are like, oh, just call me Jack instead of,
Because they have the
doctor.
privilege to do
Mhm.
so.
Yeah.
As a man, you are already perceived to have more power,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? When we think about, like, if I ask someone, who do you think is a leader of a Fortune 500 company? Who do you think is a leader of a business? Who do you think is an entrepreneur? It's a white guy.
Hmm.
And if it's not a white guy, it's definitely a guy. It's not going to be a Black disabled woman that they're going to be like, that's who I see as a leader.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
who I see as an entrepreneur. And so when you already have that privilege built in, where it's like, hi, sir, welcome in. Are you looking for a table? Are you looking for a room? How can I help you? What are you looking for today? Then you can just say, hey, call me Jack, right? But I didn't have I still don't have the privilege of that. So that's why I had to spend all this money, and put all this time and trauma into getting a degree so I can have an idea of what that respect looks like for that guy who doesn't really have to do shit and he has all that power.
Yeah. And when you were establishing your own DEI firm and working with clients, how frustrating was it to navigate conversations on how to make their workplaces safer and inclusive to them, especially when, you see executive leadership is still very predominantly white and male?
Mhm. So to answer that question, I have to say that I've had to remove DEI from the messaging of my company,
Hmm.
right? Because those words are not allowed anymore per the federal government.
Hmm.
And as a result of that, any company that receives federal, county, state dollars can't work with anyone who has those letters in their name or their business,
Yeah.
right? And uh, private companies follow suit of the federal government.
Hmm.
And so I've had to remove those letters to stay as employed as one can stay employed when someone
Hmm.
like me is under attack.
Hmm.
Now, when I focused a lot on DEI during the murder of George Floyd days, I had a staff of up to 9. Today, it's been 2 years since Donald Trump has been in office. We're in the second year of him being in office. I have no employees, right? So the amount of money I've made has decreased significantly,
Hmm.
as a result of that. And so there's also, in addition to losing money and opportunities as an entrepreneur, it also meant that today I don't do DEI work because no one's going to pay for it.
Hmm.
The majority of the work I do today is strategy and creative, a lot of storytelling.
Hmm.
Every once in a while, some crisis management stuff pops in, but we're thinking about how do we tell the story of this new product or launch or thing? How do
Hmm.
we strategize a rollout of this new product launch or thing? That's what I'm doing. Most of my work is marketing, branding, and storytelling
Hmm.
now.
Yeah.
I always do DEI because of who I am. I'm never separated from that, but
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
can't publicly say that anymore. And
Yeah.
that's a form of power and control, right? That Donald wanted. Now, murder of George Floyd days, that's when we saw people saying, oh, how do we celebrate Juneteenth? We need to make sure we celebrate every month. Like, yeah, we do Black History Month and Women's History Month, but we actually need to do AAPI Heritage Month. And there's a Filipino what now? Oh, wait, we need to do that. Juneteenth is a holiday. Let's make Juneteenth a holiday, right? And so during those days, I was doing a shit ton of DEI work,
Hmm.
um, either developing DEI programs, talking a lot about DEI, coaching for white people to figure out how to work better with their leaders of color, or developing pathways and employee development programs for non-white people to excel in companies, and a lot of crisis management because a lot of brands, celebrities, influencers, and leaders were wanting to do better, but they were messing up along the way. And I would help them
Hmm.
with that. And so there's lots of times in those instances where um, a lot of those clients would forget that I am a Black person, I
Hmm.
am a woman, I am disabled, and would say and do harmful things, or the saying and doing harmful things were happening to a leader or client or someone on their team, and I would have to see things like on the screen like the n-word a lot. So a lot of
Hmm.
the n-word, and my humanity I had to put to the side to take care of the other person who's being harmed.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then I would usually have to follow up the client to say, hey, I want to remind you that maybe let's not keep it up on the screen for the entire Zoom meeting,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Let's take that down because I also am harmed by that word.
Hmm.
I'm also harmed by those actions. Um, I'm still traumatized to this day from the work that I did for,
Hmm.
you know, uh, since May 25th, 2020, murder of George
Hmm.
Floyd, to maybe 2023 started to
Hmm.
start to fizzle down. Still happening
Yeah.
24, and it definitely disappeared once Donald Trump was in office.
Yeah. And like during the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, like there was this massive like, okay, we need to start working on DEI,
Yeah.
companies to start jumping on the bandwagon. And I know when I was talking to Michelle at that time, it felt very performative. It felt like
Mm,
people
hmm.
are just trying to respond to the moment. They're like, oh my God, even white people are starting to turn against what's
Well,
happening.
that's how
So
Michelle and I bonded,
yeah.
you know, over that. Like we were on the same list of someone put together this list of DEI firms, and we were both so busy. And she may have posted it on her LinkedIn or something, and that's when I messaged her, and then we would communicate, virtually because we couldn't get together, pandemic time. But as soon as we could do distancing stuff outside, we got together and we trauma bonded off of,
Yeah.
this work, right, that we were doing. And you said something that I do want to highlight, which is you're saying George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. No one cared about Breonna Taylor. It was because of George Floyd, right?
Mhm.
And so it's going back to that earlier part of our conversation where men
Yes.
matter,
Mhm.
right? Because it happened to a man. People are like, you know. So there's an important distinction because Breonna Taylor was murdered the week people were like, do we go in? Do we not go in for the pandemic?
Mhm.
Are we going? What is the world shutting down? Is it not shutting down? People were mad. There were little protests that happened, but it wasn't enough to get to the level of the biggest um, civil rights protest in modern American history. It didn't get to that level
Mhm.
because the difference with the murder of George Floyd is, yes, he was a man, and we tend to remember more men's names who were murdered by police than women's
Mhm.
names, right? So there's that. But people were at home and they had to sit at home. People who were privileged enough to work from home
Mhm.
or work from home were sitting at home and they had to see this vicious murder of knee on the neck over and over again, over and over again. And being in a position where they couldn't go outside, go on their summer vacation, do stuff with their kids, have the normal distractions of life, they had to sit in the fact that police brutality is still alive and real and true. It's not something that we saw during the Jim Crow era. It still happens,
Mhm.
right? But there was still male privilege in George Floyd's death.
Mhm. I really appreciate the observation. And, you know, why do you think everyone was so quick to get off the bandwagon on DEI, prior to Trump? Because now we got the Ron DeSantis of the world who
Yeah.
was leading the charge of dismantling DEI and the book bans. And,
Yep.
and you alluded earlier to like, and this is something I've experienced in nonprofit as well. Like the
Yeah.
dismantling of DEI has led to not just only companies, but also foundations were being cracked down, schools and universities, nonprofits losing their funding because of the DEI, where there's like a whole different shifting that has to happen, unfortunately. And companies have, deprioritized it. And then we also got the dismantling of affirmative action. And, you talked about the cuts to many jobs, especially among Black women. I know this is very exhausting. This is like a whole nother, I don't know. Could be a series, unfortunately, but they've also been like the recipient of most of these cuts. And
Mhm.
I I wonder, like, how do you think, um, how do you think people have resisted against the DEI uh cuts? I mean, we saw Target being boycotted. They lost quite a bit of money for the past year. I think they've been trying to slowly get back into
Mhm.
the graces of Black people and queer trans people that were also loyal shoppers.
Mhm.
I'm curious about what you've observed with maybe the resistance, especially from DEI, from former to current DEI practitioners to universities and nonprofits or grassroots groups that are trying to redefine, reimagine what DEI could look like. Because not to say that things were perfect before the dismantling of it, there was a lot of questions of performativeness, how it's being enforced, how accountability is still being met after companies and um, individuals get their training from DEI. So yeah, I'm curious about what your take is on that sense.
Yeah. So, dismantling white supremacy is a marathon, not a sprint.
Mhm.
And white people are not accustomed to being comfortable being uncomfortable. They just
Mhm.
want comfort. And that's the
Mhm.
privilege of white supremacy.
Mhm.
So it was cool and cute and sexy and fun during the pandemic to dismantle white supremacy. Go to the workshops, buy Akilah's sweater, buy the book, listen to the podcast, change your programming, use your power at work, holding your employer accountable. But oh my God, I'm supposed to do this for the rest of my life? This is for the rest of my life? Or I didn't realize how bad it was for Black people. I didn't realize how bad it was for disabled folks. I didn't realize how bad it
I
was
thought I was
for
going to win I thought I was
indigenous
going to get a
people.
prize. I thought I was going to win a
Yeah,
prize at the
except
end.
where was this? Why do you want me to keep doing this? I'm told I'm always right because white is right. And now you want me to hold myself accountable for the rest of my life? No. Now there's people still to this day who are like forever changed for that moment in time. There are also white people who are boycotting Target.
Mhm.
There's also white people who are mad, regardless of how they identify. They could be the most hetero, cis, non-disabled, right? White person, they're like, I don't know, I don't like what you're doing with the pride community. I don't like what you're doing with the black community. I don't like what you're doing with the brown community, right? They can be that person. But there are white people today, when Donald Trump got in office and said, no more DEI, they're like, oh, finally, I can be myself again. I can go back to how America was great. And that's when I didn't have to be held accountable. And that's what it is. See, what white people don't realize is that you and I, Randy, are comfortable being uncomfortable
Mhm.
because we're not part of the dominant culture.
Mhm.
We don't reap the benefits of white supremacy in the same way. There's people in the AAPI community that have more power than you do because of who you are, right?
Mhm.
The data shows it. If we look at equal pay day for women, equal pay day for women is white women. That's their statistic. But if you look at equal pay day for different types of ethnicities of women, Black women make 65 cents on the dollar, on the white
Mhm.
man's dollar,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
The women who make the most money are actually AAPI women,
Mhm.
and they tend to be Chinese, Japanese, make
Yes.
more money than white women
Mhm.
because of the model
Mhm.
minority myth and those stereotypes that are there, right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
if you go down to Hmong or Vietnamese women,
Cambodian, yeah.
Cambodian women, like it is a, thank you, it is a absolutely deplorable number
Mhm.
of how much money they're making to the white man's dollar
Mhm.
and to the white woman's dollar, right? I say all that because we are used to being uncomfortable. We are used
Mhm.
to being oppressed. We're used to being in white spaces, and we know how to navigate white spaces to promote, to grow for our safety, for our culture. We know how to be viewed as a monolith when we're not that. We know how to do all of these things. We know how to do the work because we have to in order to survive in the
Mhm.
United States of America. White people don't have to do that because their lives are absent of accountability. In order
Mhm.
to dismantle white supremacy, that means they have to be held accountable, and that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate, drawing the distinctions too. And also like I also think like in the Asian AAPI Asian cultures, like I always notice that, and this is something that I'm going to get into later on, is like, yeah, the darker your skin is, the more lower class you are perceived to be.
Of
And this
course.
also goes into colonization, this goes into anti-Black racism. And so I do think that it's very deeply connected. And
Mhm.
and you wrote your memoir about your experiences living as a disabled Black woman. What feedback have you gotten from people that have read your book, and what have you learned from writing this book and the experience of sharing your book in the many different
Yeah.
spaces?
So I received incredible feedback. It's always wild when someone is like, I loved your book. Your book was great. It changed my perspective. Everyone needs to read your book. When those things happen, it's just like, wow, because it was incredibly traumatizing to write my
Hmm.
book. And
Hmm.
so, for your viewers and listeners, my book is a collection of essays. And
Hmm.
all these essays are real stories that happened in my life to help people learn and unlearn. It comes from the viewpoint of a woman. It comes from the viewpoint of a Black person. It comes from the viewpoint of an a disabled person who
Hmm.
deals with ableism. And sometimes it's a combo platter of those three things. But
Hmm.
there are ways to help people who look and live like me to feel seen, validated, and heard, and for white people who, you know, don't necessarily understand or want to learn and unlearn how to be a better white person, they can connect with whatever resonates for them. If you don't see me for being a Black person, fine. If you don't see me for being a woman, fine. Maybe you'll see me as a disabled person. But one of those parts of my intersectionality, a
Hmm.
term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989,
Hmm.
of the intersections of our identity, you'll be able to find a story that relates to you to help you realize that you have work to do as a white person, or again, for those who look and live like me, seen, validated, and heard. And so feedback's been great. The book process is absolutely horrible. I have a top five publisher. I'm with Hachette. I've talked publicly about how hard it's been with Hachette. This is nothing new. Hachette knows how hard it's been. But in general, in the publishing industry, particularly if you have a top five publisher, you are not valued if you
Hmm.
are not a white person.
Hmm.
It's an incredibly white space. It's a space that upholds values of white supremacy. Um, unless you are like a Michelle Obama, you're not getting the same experience as a white author, male, female,
Mm,
or non-binary.
mm,
And so I felt very alone during this whole book
mm,
process.
mm,
I have no support. And that's why I keep talking about my book. I keep promoting my book. The goal that I'm working on right now is for my book to be a paperback. Paperback is more accessible. It's easier to
mm,
travel with, but it's also a more affordable price point than the $29 it is for a hardback book, which I love. I love my
mm,
hardback book,
mm,
but it'd be great for people that be able to see it as a have access to it as a paperback. And so this is where I get to do my plea. Buy
mm,
my book. Download my audiobook. It's my voice if you like it. I'm sorry, you're welcome. Uh, Buy the book, write a review. Reviews are really, really important
mm,
wherever you purchase the book or not. If you didn't purchase the book, write a review. And you can always contact us to say, hey, we want this in paperback.
mm,
But until there's more book sales, then I'm alone. And so here's the other part that's really hard about being a Black author and also a disabled author is if your book doesn't make enough money for them, it doesn't impact just me, it impacts future Black
mm,
authors and future disabled authors who are looking for a book deal, which is basically money to be able to write a book, right? And have support. And
mm,
so I have to carry the weight and the pressure of
mm.
everyone who wants to come after me, where white authors don't have to do that.
Yeah, I think this is a really important touch point here is like you are, even though you are with a top five publisher where they have the resources to market and, work with the New York Times and the Washington Post, I think they're going to be obsolete at this point, in my opinion. But but also like the level of marketing that you have to do, having to go on your Instagram or being on TikTok and,
Mhm.
trying to capture an audience, work with algorithms. This is like a full-time job in of itself, and not a lot of authors or prospective authors are ready to take that kind of a task on, and then also
Or
to
can
eat book.
afford to pay
Yes.
someone to do that for them. That in itself is a luxury where a lot of white authors do. Like I'm also an editor, I'm a sensitivity editor, and I'm hired by publishers and authors to help them with their book, to help them write their book, make sure their book is inclusive, coach them. What I do so many things. And these some of the white authors that I will work with have the budget to hire me, right? They have the budget to hire a PR person that can do all of this stuff for them, in addition to their publisher supporting them with their marketing, branding, and storytelling.
Yeah, and one thing that we don't talk enough about is disability and disability
Mhm.
through intersectionalities and, and being spaces from a corporate setting to movement and social justice spaces. What do you feel is often a pattern that you have noticed that makes being in those spaces uncomfortable and ableist?
I do not mean to laugh. I'll give you an example. I was hired by Salesforce
Mm,
to speak at their kind of like their little VC funded summit. So they fund certain startups.
mm,
And this one was specific to women and intersectionality. And so it was in San Francisco. Again, I live in Oakland, California. So I drive to San Francisco, I park, walk, go to the spot. And the spot, it was a historic home, like a painted ladies type of home. So think Full House. It was like one of those types of houses. And they're like, hi, Dr. K, blah, blah, blah. We're going to take you to where you're going to speak. And I was using my cane at the time.
mm,
And I had to go up a flight of stairs. And I was like, well, where is the elevator? There was no elevator.
mhm,
And so I had to step by step by step by step go up the stairs. And then I had to go on a stage. The stage didn't have steps, the stage didn't have ramps. I just had to get up on it. And then here I am on a panel talking about intersectionality. And so I said, hey, hi, I'm here. I'm disabled. I'm very publicly known for being disabled. This cane cover my book, right? And I received an email asking for my accommodations for a diet of what to eat today, but there was no accommodations for what I needed as a person. So you're having a summit so people can feel seen who are in a press group. And here I am not seen in this space.
Mhm.
And since I'm not seen here in this space, what does that really mean for what you're trying to do for intersectionality? So I use that as an example, and they apologize. I use that as an example of a lot of these spaces, workspaces, are not designed for disabled folks. They're not. You may see a ramp, but they're not thinking about the workstation. They're not thinking about remote working. I'm seated at home on a butt pillow with a heating pad. I can stand up at any moment in time. I can lay down on the floor. I can get any of the assistive devices I need to perform my job. Any brace is readily available around me.
Mhm.
That's not the case for people in 9 to 5 spaces who
Mhm.
are disabled. A lot of workspaces virtually and in person are filled with ableism. Some people won't put captions on. People don't ask if they could have captions on. They don't feel comfortable asking for captions. There are people who are disabled who cannot identify as being disabled
Mhm.
because they've seen how other disabled people are treated, or they're coming from an employer that once they shared that they're disabled, they lost their job, right? So we're in a position that even though there's federal laws that protect us, Section 504 with the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, the Americans with Disabilities Act, there's so much legislation that supports disabled people in the workforce, but they're not upheld and they're not supported because there's a lot of fear, bias, and discrimination for people who are disabled.
Mhm. Which also begs me the question of like when I have done job applications, one of the things that I get pretty bothered by and I struggle with is when they ask you the question, are you disabled? And they'll give you all this list. And some of them I do check off the cross the
Hmm.
boxes because I deal with diabetes, blood
Hmm.
pressure, high blood hypertension
Yeah,
issues, and mental
yeah.
health. And it's like, what do I answer to that? That's the thing that I
Hmm.
struggle with. Is it because they're trying to like get this checklist off,
Hmm.
or is it representing something very deep? It's like, okay, we're gonna like this is not gonna be a good fit for this person's not gonna be a fit for us. And I do struggle with answering that because part of me is like, yeah, I am because of what you're asking me, and I'm not ashamed of it. Um, and at the same
Yeah.
time, I'm also like, this could be to my own detriment and to my own damage. If I say I don't wish to answer, it just feels like I am hiding something, and it's so frustrating. Or if you see the gender boxes of male, female, or I don't want to say, and I'm just
Hmm.
like, well,
Yeah.
there are non-binary folks or trans folks that are not ashamed, but they just aren't given an option to
Right.
answer to that. So yeah, I'm curious
Yeah.
about that part.
I mean, honestly, who the fuck knows, right? Because the employer, you don't know the history with the employer and you don't know what they're using it for. So, me personally, I have the privilege of being on the outside of a company where I check all the boxes on things because I have my own company. But for someone who is looking for a job or even doing an employee engagement survey, you have to be careful. So, for example, if you are the only Black person on your team and you say you are Black on an employee engagement survey, that team, that employer is going to know exactly who you are because they know there's only one Black person on the team.
Mhm.
And so, if you're sharing that you feel you don't have opportunities to promote or you're supported by your leader, they automatically know it's you.
Mhm.
It's the same thing if you say you're disabled. If you've already identified publicly you're disabled, they know it's you. You're the only disabled person on the team. And that's where these things aren't necessarily fair.
Mhm.
So I always say it's up to you with what you want to disclose. Now, you pointed to something that's really important is that's not fair because you are not ashamed
Mhm.
of your intersectionality, of your disability. You have something we call um, non-apparent disability or
Mhm.
invisible disability.
Mhm.
Uh, Apparent disability or visible. Now we say apparent and non-apparent because visible and invisible is actually um, an ableist term when we're talking about disability because there are people who have limited vision who cannot see a certain amount of whether or not someone could be disabled or not. So apparent or non-apparent. And there's people like me who are dynamic. I have both apparent and non-apparent disability. So I live with myopathic Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's incredibly rare. My joints like to partially dislocate every single day. So sometimes I have on braces on around my body. Sometimes I'm using a cane. Sometimes I'm not. Either way, I'm 100% in pain, but you can't necessarily see it. And you and I, Randy, have a problem of being good looking. And so then people also don't think like, for me, I have major depressive disorder and I'm very
Mhm.
funny. So why would she have major depressive disorder? Right. And if she's using a cane, she probably just got injured. It's never I'm disabled. I got
Mhm.
injured. And that's
Mhm.
part of that pretty privilege I was talking about. It's always what happened to you. And I respond with, I'm disabled. And then there's immediate silence,
Mhm.
right? Because they want a car accident, right? They want to fall. They want something where they know my beautiful self will go back to being normal,
Yeah,
right?
the
And not
temporary
disabled.
they see it as being very temporary. Yeah.
Temporarily disabled and
Mhm.
I'm permanently disabled, right? And so again, all of this stuff is designed to uphold values of white supremacy. We want you to be perfect. We want you to be normal. We don't want you to have diabetes because maybe there'll be a moment where something happens with your diabetes and then you're out of the office.
Mhm.
And that's going to impact what we want because we care about your work.
Mhm.
Even though there's rules there
Mhm.
to support you,
Mhm.
right? The other thing that can happen is if you sometimes check one of those boxes as a Black person, as a disabled person, well, maybe they're not as smart, right? So when
Mhm.
we're talking about these like model minority myth privileges, part of it is if you're a certain ethnic group, like certain AAPI groups, you're viewed as smart no matter what. You also could not be smart, but you are just, you automatically get into that box. Hence why certain people will get paid more money. But there's a negative side of that too, whereas you're disabled, how are you smart? Like, because people don't equate being disabled and smart together, which is why I'm very vocal about being disabled. So people know pretty people can be disabled. What people view as normal can be disabled. Having 3 degrees, including a doctorate, can also be viewed as disabled to challenge those viewpoints. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, there's so much more work to do in workplaces and spaces so we can truly be our authentic selves.
Yeah, and when you think of ways, and this is something that I have talked with other folks who are disabled, is that one thing I will always admire and respect is that they do the research. I mean, unfortunately, they have to do the labor of having to figure out, is this space accessible? Like having to ask questions. Um, I being a caregiver or, taking care of my mom who's a stroke survivor and, needing to have a wheelchair
Mhm,
when she goes to places,
mhm,
there are times when, I have gone to supermarkets that don't have the electric wheelchair or don't have a working one. And
mhm.
I sometimes leave extremely frustrated and angry because, my mom's deprived of her own humanity, like her,
Yes.
like that she's not being valued. And, you know, I think what people also need to realize is that if we're lucky enough to be able-bodied, our able-bodied is always conditional. And I think
Mhm.
that people forget that a next day later we could have a car accident that renders us immobile or incapacitated, or we could have a stroke. These things do happen to our bodies. And so as a society, we don't think about that angle that any of us could be disabled or further disabled because of
Mhm.
different circumstances, and our bodies are sometimes very unpredictable. And I think that, when we are in spaces, and I went to a wedding, a family wedding, and clearly everyone knows that my mom's disabled. And I go to the church, as an old church, there were stairs. I was furious. I was trying really hard not to start cussing in a church, even though I'm not religious, but
Yeah.
I was feeling enraged, and I was like, okay. I had a lot of feelings. I had to calm down, but I felt this betrayal because I felt that, you know, my mom, we all flew thousands of miles to support our family. And this is like something that you should have told us. It's like, okay, if it was gonna be stairs, I'd probably be like, okay, maybe we could find a way to just prepare. And I think what disabled folks have to do is they end up having to do so much labor to figure it out, ask the hard questions that people don't even think about. So, what ways can people become more aware and accommodate the needs of
Mhm.
disabled folks when planning events and convenings?
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking care of your mom and being there for her. You are the reason why she feels and knows she has humanity because you're also championing for her. And I think it's really important for people to understand that something as simple as an electronic cart does add to humanity because it's the independence your mom likes to have as a mom. I
Mhm,
want to go get groceries, or any person. I just want to go get groceries. I want to participate. And these things are really important for our overall sanity and our humanity to be able to do things. Um, so there's that. Uh, Humanity is an important word when you're thinking about your spaces and places. Spaces and places, your work environments, the restaurant, where you're inviting people, having an event, a conference, a workshop. All you have to do is have someone do an ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act walkthrough.
mhm,
That's it. Just walk through the space, roll through the space. Do you have accessible spaces? If you have an event with like banquet seating or tabled seating, do you have spaces that don't have chairs? So a person who uses a wheelchair can roll in there. Are you asking for accommodation? If you can ask me if I have a fucking food allergy, you can ask if I need accommodations. So that line
mhm,
should be, what accommodations do you need in the space, diet, food? How can I support you? Because accommodations are also a person who's breastfeeding.
mhm,
They, by law, have to have a place in the event space to be able to breastfeed and store their breast milk.
mhm,
There's all these things already built in there. But because of the way white supremacy works, ableism is a
mhm,
tenet and pillar of white supremacy. People tend to go to the dominant culture and exclude disabled people over and over again. Now, this is the most important thing, which is you are going to be
mhm,
disabled.
mhm,
At any moment in time, it's going to happen. You will become disabled, whether temporarily, like a knee surgery, a twisted ankle, and you're using crutches, or permanently. You will become disabled. We're living longer. You will become disabled. You'll have a comorbidity or condition that you'll have to, chronic condition that you're going to have to navigate. You will be disabled. So, any accommodation you're doing for a disabled person today is
mhm,
preparing for your future tomorrow for you or a loved one. And so, if you are discriminating against disabled people today, once you become disabled, it's going to be put in perspective for you
mhm,
of what that's like. And so, treat someone today how you would like to be treated in the future when you do become disabled.
mhm,
Another way you could do that is also by thinking about how powerful words are. I encourage people to say disabled, disability. It's not a
mhm,
bad word. We're having this interview during Disability Pride Month, which is July.
mhm,
We have pride with being disabled. So, folks who do not have a disability use the term non disabled because that helps with the term disability. Able bodied, it basically means that people who are disabled don't have the ability to do things.
mhm,
We have the ability to do things the same way or with an accommodation or with a tool, with
mhm,
support, asking for help, but we have the ability. We are able to do things as well. It's just not the same as mainstream. And so
mhm.
use disabled, disability, non-disabled, and remember, if you're not disabled today, your loved one will be disabled tomorrow.
And I really appreciate these words and also these reminders. And, you know, this administration and there's so much exhausting thing. I mean, this could take several days at this point. But in a nutshell, we've seen the accelerating violence with ICE, law enforcement, assault on reproductive rights, trans people, enabling of the genocide in Gaza, Sudan, Congo, and now what's happening in Lebanon and Iran. And so how do we instill hope when it feels very dire? Because you look at social media, algorithms really plays into it, and you're being fed a lot of very dark things. And um And sometimes like it just feels very hopeless because it's an endless
Hmm.
slaughter. And one thing that I have been doing, like especially since I got back in the podcast a year ago, it's not to toot my horn. I think about, okay, let's bring stories that actually have like abundance, that there is like okay, what are communities doing? I think there's power to that because it shows that we're not surrendering to this as hard as it is. Um, I also think that yeah, like the digital screen, especially when it's run by techno-fascism and AI and the data centers and all that, um,
Hmm.
very dangerous it, dangerous tools. Um, that's like how do we try to navigate that relationship? How do we make sure that we have meaningful digital and in-person community spaces that feels not only safe, but it also fosters creativity, it fosters imagination and what have you. But I'm curious about how do you instill hope for yourself, but also for the people around you and your audience when you are, you know, like very much internally raging, whether it's on threads or on, on Instagram or what have you.
My therapist said something that's really important, which is things can change at any time. And that's what I tell myself. I have it written on the wall next to me that things can change at any time. And I think that's important to realize. There are days I do not have hope at all. When you see what's happening around the world, different types of genocides, bombing, wars, um, infectious outbreaks,
Mhm.
you're just like, what the fuck is this? And then you see what's happening in the federal government here,
Mhm.
and you can see what's happening per state, right? So like DEI started between Texas and Florida. Those states
Mhm.
got rid of it first, right? You
Mhm.
mentioned that with DeSantis. And then it became a federal thing.
Mhm.
It was forecasting, foreshadowing what was going to happen when you got a Republican in office. They didn't want that around. We're in a country, it's the United States of America, that doesn't want me. I am the child of a Haitian immigrant. I'm a first gen kid.
Mhm.
We have TPS that has been canceled. Mm. We're going to see a lot of horrific things happen to Haitian people.
Mhm.
I'm a Black person. I get to see Black bodies murdered all the time. Nolan Wells is happening right now.
Mhm.
It's horrific on so many levels.
Mhm.
Lynching has gone up. It's horrific on so many levels, especially when you think that the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act happened and signed into law by Joe Biden in 2022. We're seeing lynchings going up. As a disabled person, the subsidies have been taken away from the Affordable Care Act.
Mhm.
And so as a result, when I go to the emergency room, which I frequent a lot, there's a longer queue because there's people who can no longer afford their healthcare. I have private health insurance. It's the one thing I fight to keep
Mhm.
because of all the rare conditions I have to navigate. But I've gone to the emergency room with a cardiac episode and I wasn't even taken back to a room because there weren't beds. So I was just monitored in the waiting room. And that's when I knew before, but I officially knew that my risk of death has increased,
Mhm.
not just for myself, anyone who has a cardiac episode, because there's not enough monitors to put us on. We have to be on a monitor when we're having a cardiac episode.
Mhm.
Can't have a monitor in the emergency room waiting room. So how does one have hope in this country that is actively trying to erase me, to kill me? This country
Mhm.
is literally trying to kill me. Again, I have to remind myself, you never know what can happen and things can change at any moment in time.
Mhm.
So I show up as my authentic self. I call out the things by calling them in. Calling them out is cancel culture, you suck. Calling them in is, okay, that sucked, and here's why. Here are some tools. Is that what you meant? Do you want to learn and unlearn to show up and do better? Right? I do that. I use my platform. I use my pretty privilege. I use my light skin privilege.
Mhm.
I use my degree. I use all the things to remind people that my life and those who have lives that are similar to mine or even identical deserves to thrive and have all the social determinants of health to be in this country.
Mhm.
And then I just tell myself to keep being amazing. It's my little catchphrase. And sometimes I do roll my eyes when I say it because I'm like, but what am I being amazing for? What's the point? But you got to find those little things because I do believe, particularly now as the midterms are getting closer and closer and closer,
Mhm.
that we are going to see a change. I do believe that seeing Mondami as a
Mhm.
socialist and his position helps people understand there's more than just Democrats and Republicans,
Mhm.
right? I do believe that we will get back. And we know history does that. We
Mhm.
had
Yeah.
Barack Obama for 2 terms.
Mhm.
This is the effect of
The
Barack Obama for
pendulum.
two
Yeah.
terms, right?
Mhm.
That's, yeah, right? The boomerang of sorts. It will go back. It may not be another oppressed person, but it could be a person who believes in my humanity,
Mhm.
your mom's humanity, your listeners' humanity, right? And I believe we will get back there,
Mhm.
even when everything sucks.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think about, the people in Gaza. It's like, okay, people who are still fighting, it's like, I believe that Palestine will be free. I believe that the empire of Israel will fall, collapse. And so I do think that, yeah, and also the reminder that empires do fall. We've seen that in history time and time again,
And
right?
America is an empire. People
Mm-hmm.
forget
Or,
America is an empire, right? We are the baby colonizers. We came from the OGs,
mm-hmm,
right? The UK, British Empire,
mm-hmm,
right? The British Empire. That's why we see movement in Hawaii. That's why we see movement in Puerto Rico. That's
mm-hmm,
why we see these countries, including my country of Haiti, you know, talking about the history of how America has harmed,
mm-hmm.
right? So empires fall, and I think we're going to see the fall of the American empire. And
Yeah,
Donald is doing a wonderful job to make that happen. I
yeah.
mean, right now we have Fauci who's on the stand
While
being
we are dealing
accused
with we are dealing with infectious diseases and
and outbreaks. Yeah, like well,
yeah.
all these things that were permitted with the funding that America provided around the world for stuff. But we have Fauci uh, being ridiculed and criticized for the
Mm,
pandemic, for the COVID outbreak. And I'm like, you know who fucked up the COVID outbreak? The president at the time, Donald, who was
mm,
telling people to drink bleach and not taking it seriously. And the president who has gotten rid of our infectious disease programs and
mm,
offices. That's the guy. But the accountability, back to my point, white people don't like accountability.
mm,
They don't want to be held accountable. Racists
mm,
don't like to be held accountable. White supremacists
mm.
don't like to be held accountable,
Which is
right?
why the Confederate flag, still rises, and did the
Mhm.
South ever fall? And I think that I can't remember what poet said that, and I was like, yeah, it's like the Civil War may have been over, but did the South ever fall? Was there ever accountability? No. And
How many countries do you know that have statues erected for losers?
I mean, you saw the
Right?
denazification in Germany. That was a good one, and I don't think um I don't
America
think
hasn't atoned. Germany has atoned. America has
yeah,
not done that. Yeah.
I don't think West Asians have like a monument erected of Genghis Khan. I don't think you've seen like Nicolas Ceausescu, who from Romania. I don't think you see a monument erected from him. And so I think that, yeah, I think that really tells you that kind of power and that also this delusion. I think Sonia Renee said it best. It's not necessarily white supremacy because it's also white delusions
Yeah.
because there's
Yep.
nothing supreme. I mean, I have watched a lot of videos of, black people defending themselves and beating the crap out of white people because it's kind of like the idea that, there are people that are foolishly thinking that they are that supreme and they clearly show that they're not. And it's quite wild.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
quite amusing to be honest with you. And, I think about the solidarity with Black people and especially from non-Black folks of color and I say this from an Asian perspective here. And, one of the frustrating things that I have always observed and even experienced from some of the backlash I have received from Asian men specifically, is how often non-Black people of color subscribe to this ideology of white supremacy and adjacency. Why do you think it's so easy and convenient for Asian and Latinx communities to be anti-Black, but still be supportive of the oppressors? And I think this is something that lives rent-free in my head.
Mhm. Well, because white supremacy is the American dream. So if you are an immigrant, you want the American dream, and the American dream is white supremacy, being
Mhm,
racist, homophobic, xenophobic, ableist. It's doing those things to keep that feeling of superiority, right? And like I've seen it, and I talk about it in the book of my own father who has upheld values of white supremacy
mhm,
because he's an immigrant, right? He
mhm,
wanted that the picket fence and having the power and all those things that come with this ideal of the American dream.
mhm,
American dream is fueled by white supremacy.
mhm. Yeah, and I'd also think about like how a lot of immigrants, especially with men, they come from countries. Oh, let's face it, like internationally, globally, patriarchy is everywhere. And I think that when they come to the US, that mentality still it never leaves them. They
Mhm,
just want to reclaim that patriarchy and
mhm.
that power, you know. And it's hard to do that in America. So there is the sense of like, hey, well, this is what I'm gonna have to do to get that um
Yeah.
so-called power. And we see that with um men of color joining ICE and CBP, you know, the Border Patrol and law enforcement. And we've seen how um deeply frustrating that is to watch
Mhm.
when they're, you know, subconsciously or just kidnapping people, families, children. And it really tells me about this, you know, this slavery mentality, like this Stockholm syndrome. And I think this is a conversation that's still going to be ongoing because I have seen where Asian solidarity and Black solidarity have worked, where like you've seen that with Thich Nhat Hanh, with Martin Luther King, you've seen that with, you know, Jesse Jackson, with Vincent Chin's family. Um, but we've also have seen where it has fallen
That's how
very
white
apart.
supremacy works.
Yeah.
If you're
Mhm.
able to put oppressed groups against each other, white people sit back and are like, thank you so much, less work
I
for
know.
me to do. Right.
Exactly.
And we see that with so many different um, ethnic groups purposefully, right?
Mhm.
Purposefully. And, the there's this Jean-Michel Basquiat is one of my favorite
Mhm.
painters.
Yeah.
And he has this painting called The Irony of Negro Policemen.
Mhm.
And I have a print in my home. And I love that so much because as a person of color, as a BIPOC person, to be in law enforcement, whatever that looks like in
Mhm.
America, ICE, Border Patrol,
Mhm.
um, police department, you are choosing to uphold values of white supremacy
Mhm.
because those are the systems that uh, are the kind of the weights and balances for upholding white supremacy, right? To oppress because here you are, you could be a black officer going into a black neighborhood and you could be that officer or be with the officer that murders and shoots a black person.
Mhm.
There's no way to dismantle those
Mhm.
structures.
Mhm.
They have to be eliminated and rebuilt.
Mhm.
Should
Mhm.
we have policing? Sure. But we are white people who live in a very fancy, rich white neighborhood where they are
Mhm.
actually there to protect us. Most of us are not those individuals. We're individuals where either our mental health or skin color is
Mhm.
going to be the reason why we're murdered or at best maimed, right,
Yeah.
by these individuals. And so you know the white supremacy is not just for white people, it's also ingrained in BIPOC individuals. White
Yeah.
supremacy is ingrained in disabled folks too. There are racist ass disabled folks.
Oh yeah.
I've
We saw
experienced
that.
it.
We also saw that earlier with what happened with Michael B. Jordan. And I'm losing his name because I'm having brain fog, but
Yeah,
that was a great example of it. And it's
right.
like, you know, it's like, yes, we should. find ways to make disabled people feel safe and seen, but at what
Yeah.
expense? At whose expense? It's also a
Right.
question.
Delroy Lindo.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
thank
were
you.
up there. Right. And you have a white man who has Tourette's, and which is a disability, but we also know there's so many things of you put a mic next to the guy. You didn't set him up for success. And then also being a white guy didn't initially apologize, but then apologize. Like, I mean, there's so many things there's
Hmm.
layers in there. It's a beautiful
Yes.
study. I write about it in my Substack, but it's one of those things where, you know, we have to dismantle white supremacy within ourselves
Hmm.
first. And
Hmm.
by doing that, that's how we can make the world a better place. That's how we can get back to humanity, because that's how white supremacy works.
Hmm.
It's in there. That American dream that our family members loved was from a Hollywood movie
Hmm.
or a TV show that they saw, right? With
Hmm.
that and that vision that's built in there. They have to dismantle those feelings here. You have to ask yourself, why am I being biased or racist towards um, another person of color? Oh, white people want me to do that. I
Hmm.
need to not do that.
Yeah.
Just let white people be racist, white people be xenophobic, let them own that, right? And we work collectively to dismantle and be there for each other while they are taking their time to decide if they really want to dismantle the problem they started, which is white supremacy.
Yeah. I think one of the questions, because I interrogate this for my own community, but I'm curious about how you interrogate this with your own community in terms of like Black celebrities. I mean, TLC Chili, said some very disparaging things while trying to deny her own anti-Black racism, which I thought was very funny to me because that audience is practically Black women, and Black women voted for Kamala,
And
90% of them.
gay and gay men.
Yes, and gay Black queers as well. They have
Yeah,
also been very supportive, and I'm like, okay, the math is a math thing here, Chili. I don't know where
but
you're
it
getting.
is.
Yes, and the thing is that, and what I think is like, okay, if you feel that strongly, then why do you feel the need to perform for Black audiences and getting Black accolades from Black
Mhm.
establishments and institutions and
She
whatnot.
feels superior to Black people.
Mhm.
She feels superior to T-Boz.
Yeah,
T-Boz is not a Republican.
no. And I wish Left Eye was still here because she was the creator, the genius of
She
that group.
was,
Hmm.
yeah, and more of the activist, right?
Hmm.
And the group. And here she put her position in that place that impacted her group,
Hmm.
her friend, her sister, right? Her partner, all because of white supremacy.
Hmm.
And then she also wanted to play in our faces like we didn't know how to read.
Yeah.
We can see that you donated money to these people who are harmful,
Hmm.
right? And then you can question it like, oh, that's why your partner's a celebrity, but maybe a white guy. So is that white guy a Republican? Right? Because I mean,
I
we
think
had
she
what?
I think she
Mhm.
underestimated how good Black people are good at being detectives and sleuths because I've seen this online. It's like, boy, they will
Anyone
pop
being
up the
detectives and
receipts.
sleuths.
Oof.
Well,
Yeah.
back to your earlier point, that
Yeah.
is one thing that has remained since the murder of George Floyd days,
Yeah.
which is like people do want to hold someone accountable when they
Yeah.
are being racist, homophobic, ableist, xenophobic, any of those things.
Hmm.
They want to do that. That's why, like, oh, I love Miss Rachel so much,
Yes. Same. Same.
right? Because the first chapter of my book is White Women Are Exhausting. Miss Rachel is not exhausting.
Right.
She's a definition of an accomplice. She's not an ally, she's an accomplice. She's putting her career on the line, her name on the line. She's
For
getting death
safety.
threats.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get death threats. I put my career on the line. I've lost so much, like, and that's what I'm doing to dismantle white supremacy, and she is doing it. And I
Mm-hmm.
love her dearly so much for that. She follows me, which is one of
Oh,
my
that's
proudest
great.
moments
Wow. That is
in life
amazing.
for that to happen. But like
Wow.
she
Yes.
follows so many different activists, and she's not just following the super famous activists or any of those things. She's
Hmm.
really doing the work. And that is what people need to do if they really want to dismantle white supremacy. It is white people that need to do that. Because even with all my degrees and accolades of being on a Forbes list and having top 5 published book and all these things, I'm still not a white guy. The white guy can go and say exactly what I say, and people will listen to him, opposed to
Hmm.
me, the actual
Hmm.
expert,
Hmm.
right? And so we need white people to continually do that. We don't need the Chili's of the world who want
Mm-hmm.
to uphold white supremacy, the Donalds of the world who are
Mm-hmm.
causing harm, and these horrible, you know, uh,
Mm-hmm.
white influencers that are
Mm-hmm.
saying and doing vicious things that harm you and I, Randy. We
Mm-hmm.
don't need those people.
Mm-hmm.
We need to get to the point of where everyone gets the benefits of white supremacy.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing for people to hear, but the benefits of white supremacy means you get to thrive in this country. You get the things you need to be an American in this country. You get access to healthcare. You get a job that pays you well. You get promoted and you don't even try. Your pain is believed in, the emergency room. You get pulled over and just told to
Mm-hmm.
slow down or just get a speeding ticket,
Mm-hmm.
right? You get the opportunity to live in a neighborhood that doesn't have a data center or any type of pollution in
Mm-hmm.
that space or place and has access to transportation and perks. You have enough money to get your groceries and drive a car. That's what white supremacy is. But the reason why it's white supremacy is because it says it's only for white people.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I not deserving of the same things? Why
Yeah.
is Randy not deserving of the same
Yeah.
things? So we need those white people to say, hey, everyone deserves the same thing. And that's what Miss Rachel is doing.
Yeah, yeah, which is the opposite of Taylor Swift, but I'm also like yeah, which I don't want to get into with them, with her and her fan base, but like, I also think about like like I know that you're a big Beyonce fan. I have seen her plenty of times, and and I struggle with Jay-Z,
Mhm.
and also especially what he said about Colin Kaepernick, and Beyonce, and a lot of heavy celebrities. I've been like having to really revisit my own celebrity fandom. Like I'm been a big Janet Jackson fan, and I've learned a lot of social justice from her from the Rhythm Nation album,
Mhm.
and seeing what she said about Kamala, and I was like, and also her brother Randy, who manages her, also a known abuser, and a mega, very open mega, and I'm just like, okay, there's a lot of disappointing things I've had to learn for the past year. It's like, okay, you got the Carters hanging out with the Kushners, a year ago. You also had
Mhm.
heard them not saying anything about Gaza or the
Mhm.
current state of this administration. So,
Mhm.
yeah, do you see that people are starting to shift away from these big celebrities, even if it's like a
Yeah.
person of color? Yeah.
Yeah. I think accountability is really important. You know, on one hand, I love the joy that I get from
Hmm.
seeing Beyonce,
Hmm.
and I deserve that joy. Even
Absolutely.
Jay-Z, I deserve that joy.
Hmm.
But I think what people are forgetting is that billionaires only care about themselves,
Yeah.
right? And money. And it doesn't matter. Like Oprah has gotten on my last fucking nerves, because
Hmm.
she's also hanging out with the Bezos, and Gail hangs out with the Bezos, and then they're also doing stuff with people, and you're just like, but billionaires are being billionaires with each other,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And that doesn't include us because we're not billionaires. We're not millionaires. We're not those individuals.
Hmm.
And so, what I would hope is that we see more behavior from billionaires, um, like Mackenzie Scott,
Hmm.
Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, who are using their power and privilege for good.
Hmm.
Right? I have more respect for Beyonce than I do with Jay-Z because
Yeah.
at least she's putting millions in HBCUs.
Hmm.
At least she's like, oh, okay, you want me to be on a campaign with you, Tiffany? Well, you have to buy this Basquiat. And also you have to, I do like how she's like, you have to pay my husband. I would do that too. Um, but you have to give millions to HBCUs,
Hmm.
right? Like I like that. And I wish she would do more of that. And I wish that would rub more off on Jay-Z. It annoys me immensely that Jay-Z decided to press vinyl and have CDs that go out with Target when we know
Hmm.
how they're treating Black people. Right?
Hmm.
You didn't have to do that. You have enough money for people to DTC it, direct to consumer on your website,
Yeah.
right? There's ways for you to do it, or you could have partnered with,
He's not an indie artist here. I mean, he's been established for
right.
30 years.
I mean, yeah, you can partner with an amoeba type plate. Like there's so many things that could have been done because it's how we use that money. And I'm
Mhm.
hopeful that these folks will get more pressure from their fans and move different.
Mhm.
But until then, we have to be informed with what we are consuming. I will not
Mhm.
listen to R. Kelly song. I will not listen to
Mhm.
Chris Brown. I will not listen to Usher. Like Chris Brown and
Mhm.
Usher being on tour is one thing that irks me to my
Mhm.
core for so many
Mhm.
levels.
And Chris
I'm glad
Brown's
I
going
saw
back to
Usher.
jail.
Right, exactly. He's actively still abusing people, and people are still
Each
like,
every year, it's like there's something going on with them. And people, because like, well,
go
Rihanna's a long
support
time
him.
ago.
which was like, well, Diddy didn't do that to me. That's essentially what it said. Diddy didn't do that to me. So I have respect for him. And then whatever, Usher's
Hmm.
trauma or whatever. But you chose to go on tour with a known abuser
Hmm.
who literally just got sent or is about to be sentenced, but was convicted last week. So
Hmm.
like, what are you doing? Usher right now is mad at the pretty woman who came on stage who didn't want to be touched, right?
Yeah.
And that's fun in itself because she was a Chris Brown fan, so she probably let Chris Brown do whatever, but she didn't want Usher to do whatever. But the message still stands like you don't get access to my body just because you think you're a sex symbol. Right?
Hmm.
There's so many things in there. And so it's how are you making an informed decision?
Hmm.
I this will upset people. I still shop at Amazon.
Hmm.
Why? Because that's the place where I'm going to get affordable meds
Yeah. Yeah.
because I'm with One Medical. One Medical was bought by Amazon, so I can get affordable beds there. That's where I can
Yeah.
get affordable braces.
Yeah.
That's where I can get groceries that are affordable to me. The cheese is $2 opposed to going down to my Safeway down the street where it's 4.49. I
Hmm.
being disabled is expensive, and Amazon helps ease that burden. But I don't go
Hmm.
to Target. I don't go to Walmart,
Hmm.
right? So we're always in this position where
Yeah.
boycotting is a privilege.
Hmm.
Finding your joy is also a privilege in certain spaces and places,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I'm going to be more of a fan of Beyonce than Jay-Z right now. And
Hmm.
I'm going to hope that some fucking billionaire is going to get it together. Well, Mackenzie Scott, like to
Hmm.
make it make sense. But like we're in a position where capitalism is so deeply rooted
Hmm.
in our
Yeah.
lives
Hmm.
where even if we boycotted everything that we didn't like, we would have no music, we'd have no concert, we'd have no food, we'd have no clothes, we wouldn't have a car, we wouldn't, like we wouldn't have anything.
Hmm.
And so that's why it's really your actions, your words, and behavior. So you can have the discussion and dialogue. Like I do want to see Jay-Z's thing, but what does that mean for me seeing Jay-Z's thing? But you deserve joy. You're in pain every day. That's the dialogue that I'm having.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And I think this is something that I always think about too. Like, I mean, I still listen to Janet. I still or listen to Beyonce every now and then. But I also have to pick and choose. Like,
Mhm.
okay, maybe I could still listen, but I don't necessarily have to spend all this money on merch because I know with Beyonce I've spent a shit ton of money. I think I kind of need to listen to that. I mean, I'm in
Oh
my
my
40s
God.
already, so I'm just like and I don't feel like I need to go to a lot of extravagant concerts and paying hundreds of dollars or buying merch, and then maybe I can just go
Yeah.
to an indie artist. So I think that there's a lot of
So
like
that
reshuffling of the deck,
there's a
right?
lot. So
Yeah.
with my disability, I
Mhm.
have progressive hearing loss.
Mhm.
So my days are numbered to hearing live music, to hearing
Mhm.
music
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah.
And so I'm making a point to see the artists that I want to see because one day I won't see that. And
Mhm.
some people can say, well, that's an excuse. Okay, but I'm literally losing my hearing.
Yeah.
And that's a place of joy. And
Mhm.
so, I'm going to hopefully, if I can afford it, who knows, see Jay-Z because that album, when the first album that came out, was really important to me.
Mhm.
But it doesn't stop me from dismantling white supremacy. It doesn't stop
Mhm.
me from having conversation and dialogue about
Mhm.
these individuals. It doesn't stop me from writing about how
Mhm. Mhm.
I have a Substack that I'm working on about these very artists, right? That are not great and what that means. And again, going back to the power of choice and how we show up every day. I
Mhm.
brush my teeth, I put on my deodorant, I dismantle white supremacy.
Mhm.
I'm checking my bias and privilege all the time.
Mhm.
I'm using my voice and platform to show up in ways. There are people
Mhm.
who listen to Chris Brown and go to Chris Brown and they are supporting an abuser and most likely have been abused or know
Mhm.
an abuser in their life. And it's not that big of a deal because he didn't mean that, right? That's
Mhm.
stuff that they have to work on.
Mhm.
That's white supremacy they have to dismantle. That's
Mhm.
therapy. That's stuff they have to realize what they're pouring into.
Mhm. Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
And accept the consequences of their choice, of whatever that may be.
Yeah. And as we start to wrap up, what ways do you take care of yourself? What are some of the joys that you take on your free time or
Yeah,
the free time that you designate for yourself? Yeah.
I say no.
Yeah.
And that is how I can tap into joy. I can't do everything. And I've
Hmm.
learned the power of no. I have to listen to my body. I
Hmm.
have to rest. I've missed out on really great, wonderful moments and memories, but If I don't have the energy to do it mentally or physically, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
I am pretty traumatized by murder of George Floyd days.
Hmm.
And I want the thing to do for joy to really be joy. If I want to power through and binge watch some shows, I'm going to do that. If I want to have the energy to go outside to go to a concert, I'm going to do that. I recently saw Rosalia. It was fantastic.
Hmm.
I'm going to do the things that bring me joy, but it starts with
Hmm.
no's.
Hmm.
And then I say yes to the yeses, the things that I know will bring me joy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I've accepted a lot of that doing this type of work is very lonely and it's very isolating. And so I'm learning how to sit in my loneliness. And part
Hmm.
of that is the choices of when I do want to do something that celebrates myself or if
Hmm.
I'm spending time with other people.
Yeah. And I really love how you bring that up too, because the power of no is very important, especially now that, I'm in my 40s, and as we've gotten older, it's like, okay, we got to check our own people pleasing tendencies that we have. What is going to make us feel more present that we say yes to? And I think that is a really good thing to lift up, because I do think that when we say no, it frees us from the obligations that are unnecessary, or it can really drain us and burn us
Mhm,
out.
mhm.
Um, Lastly, like, what are you currently working on for the rest of this year? What projects, what things are you drumming up for yourself?
Yeah, I'm working on another book, figuring out what that's going to look like.
Hmm.
So that's cool. I'm working on rebuilding my business and finding clients so that I can survive and not be in like an invoice to invoice situation. And I will soon be launching. By the time this comes out, it'll be launched a campaign called 365 to disability pride. So hashtag 365 to disability pride.
Hmm.
I am launching a campaign to challenge brands and companies to change their logo
Hmm.
like they do for LGBTQ plus pride colors to disability pride colors.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
an easy fix, but it's a way to honor and acknowledge our disabled community and those who will be disabled in the future.
Hmm.
Disability Pride Month is July, and right before Disability Pride Month is LGBTQ plus Pride. So once that last day hits and we go to July 1, the drop off of Pride is ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And so you literally have the boilerplate, the template of what can be done for Disability Pride with LGBTQ plus Pride the month before, and no one does it. So
Hmm.
you could use that same editing app, whatever you're using, to change your logo to the Disability Pride flag colors to the Disability Pride flag colors from the LGBTQ plus Pride flag colors.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping with 365 days that by next Disability Pride Month in July 2027, we'll see a top brand change their Instagram logo, their company logo to our Pride flag colors. And that is going to be my little passion project for the next year.
Yeah, no, great. Best of luck to you on, getting this initiative started. And so it is an honor to have you on my show. I truly, truly appreciate, I've been following you for like the last several years. I'm so glad to have this conversation and to have this kiki,
Yeah,
because I know that there's a lot that I
so
had to get off
fun.
my chest. And also, like, I hope that people get to follow your work, follow you on Instagram at Change Cadet, Cadet, and also to pick up a copy of your book or ask your library to have it. It's The White Supremacy is All
Yes.
Around, and it's been available for the past two and a half
Mhm.
past 2 years now, and
Yeah.
still very relevant. So I hope that you get to pick up that copy, engage in um, discussions with fellow folks, and yeah, I really wish you all the best, and I hope that we continue to stay in touch.
Absolutely. Whenever you want me back, I'm happy to be here. I've really enjoyed getting to know you over the past couple years.
Mhm.
Thanks for encouraging people to do the work and hold them accountable. And I just want to tell you and everyone listening to keep being amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you.
Randy.
Thank you.